Imagine a tiny rock in the middle of the freezing, unforgiving South Atlantic Ocean. The weather is absolutely garbage. It is constantly raining, the wind blows so hard it could rip your eyebrows off, and the local population consists entirely of penguins, some extremely confused sheep, and a few thousand British people who really like drinking tea in the freezing cold. This miserable, soggy piece of real estate is known as the Falkland Islands, or, if you are from Argentina, Las Malvinas. For hundreds of years, nobody really cared about this place. I mean, why would you? It is literally a frozen rock, and things were going fine. The penguins were chilling. The sheep were eating grass. But in the year 1982, two of the most powerful nations on Earth looked at this miserable island and said, yes, let us unleash absolute hell upon each other for this. Why? Well, welcome to one of the most absurd, ridiculous, and strangely intense conflicts in modern military history. Let us rewind a little bit and set the stage. The year is 1982. Down in Argentina, things are not going great. In fact, things are a complete, flaming dumpster fire. The country is being run by a military junta, led by General Leopoldo Galtieri. Now, Galtieri was the kind of guy who loved wearing fancy uniforms covered in shiny metals he probably bought at a thrift store. He wanted to be a beloved, majestic leader, but there was a tiny, microscopic problem. Absolutely everyone hated his guts. You see, the Argentine economy was doing this fun little trick called completely collapsing. Inflation had hit a mind-boggling 600%. Imagine going to the store to buy a loaf of bread, and by the time you reach the cash register, the price has tripled, and you have to sell your kidneys to afford a jar of mayonnaise. People were losing their jobs, their life savings, and their patience. Every time Galtieri stepped outside to wave at the peasants, he was greeted with massive riots, flying tomatoes, and people kindly suggesting that he should go walk into the ocean. Galtieri was panicking. He called up his generals and said, guys, the peasants are revolting. We need to do something to distract them. We need a glorious, unifying victory. We need to do something so incredibly patriotic that they will completely forget about the fact that they cannot afford toilet paper. So, he looked at a map. He squinted his eyes, and he pointed at those soggy, freezing, sheep-infested islands just off the coast, the Malvinas. Argentina had always claimed that those islands belonged to them, despite the British having lived there for over a century. Galtieri had a brilliant, flawless, absolute genius of an idea. He thought, what if we just take them? His logic was airtight. The British are over 8,000 miles away. They are dealing with their own economic nightmare. There is no way in a million years that they are going to sail a massive fleet across the entire globe just to protect some sheep. They will probably just write us a strongly worded letter of complaint, and we will be national heroes. And the generals agreed. It was a foolproof plan. What could possibly go wrong? So, on April 2nd, 1982, the Argentine military launched Operation Rosario. They loaded up their troops, sailed across the ocean, and landed on the Falkland Islands. Now, defending the capital city of Stanley was a British governor named Rex Hunt. Rex Hunt was the most stereotypical, stiff upper-lip British gentleman you could possibly imagine. When he heard that thousands of heavily armed Argentine soldiers were storming his beaches, he did not panic. He put on his finest ceremonial uniform, complete with a massive feathery hat, grabbed his sword, and prepared to fight. He was backed up by exactly 69 Royal Marines. Nice, but also completely doomed. 69 British guys against an entire invasion force. The Royal Marines fought like absolute madmen, holding off the invaders for several hours, dodging bullets, and probably complaining about the lack of decent breakfast tea. But eventually, they were completely surrounded. Rex Hunt, refusing to lose his dignity, casually walked out to meet the Argentine commander. The Argentine commander told him to surrender. Rex Hunt looked at him, adjusted his ridiculous feathery hat, and basically said, "This is British property, you are trespassing, please kindly get off my lawn." The Argentine commander was not amused. Outgunned and outmanned, the British finally surrendered. The Argentine forces took over the islands, lowered the Union Jack, and hoisted the Argentine flag. Back in Buenos Aires, the news broke, and Galtieri's plan worked flawlessly. The very same people who were trying to burn his effigy the day before were now flooding the streets, cheering his name, waving flags, and crying tears of joy. Galtieri stood on his balcony, soaking in the glory, probably thinking he was the smartest man in the history of the universe. He had done it. He had outsmarted the British Empire. He had won the ultimate game of geopolitical chess. But there was a massive, fatal flaw in his calculation. He forgot to check who was currently running the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, 8,000 miles away in London, the Prime Minister was Margaret Thatcher, also known as the Iron Lady. And much like Galtieri, her approval ratings were currently sitting somewhere in the basement. The British economy was struggling, unemployment was high, and people were very unhappy. So, when the news reached London that Argentina had just invaded British territory and stolen their highly prized freezing sheeprocks, you might expect the Prime Minister to try and negotiate. You might expect her to ask the United Nations for help. But Margaret Thatcher did not become known as the Iron Lady because she was good at baking cookies. She was absolutely furious. She slammed her hands on the table and essentially said, "Nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, steals our penguins and gets away with it. Prepare the fleet." Her advisors were shocked. They said, "Prime Minister, are you crazy? It is 8,000 miles away. It is winter down there. The logistics are impossible." But Thatcher simply glared at them until they withered into dust and ordered the largest naval task force since the Second World War to be assembled immediately. And what a task force it was. The British military scrambled to put together everything they had. They grabbed aircraft carriers, they grabbed destroyers, they grabbed submarines. They even requisitioned luxury cruise ships and told the vacationers to get out because they needed to pack the ships with heavily armed soldiers and thousands of tons of ammunition. Within days, an absolutely massive, terrifying armada of over 100 ships and nearly 30,000 personnel was sailing down the Atlantic Ocean, armed to the teeth, and carrying a few nuclear weapons, just in case things got really out of hand. The British public, completely forgetting about their own economic problems, suddenly became insanely patriotic. They waved flags, cheered for the troops, and fully supported the idea of traveling across the globe to violently reclaim an island they probably could not point to on a map yesterday. Let us cut back to Buenos Aires. General Galtieri is sitting in his fancy office. He is sipping a nice glass of expensive champagne. He is looking at his newly acquired high approval ratings. Life is good. Suddenly, one of his advisors bursts through the door, sweating profusely. The advisor says, "General, we have a slight problem. The British are not writing a letter. They are sending their entire navy, and they look really, really angry." Galtieri slowly lowers his glass. The realization hits him like a freight train. He had gambled his entire political career on the assumption that the British would just let it go. And now, the Empire was striking back. What will happen when the massive British Armada finally reaches the freezing waters of the South Atlantic? Will the Argentine Air Force be able to defend their stolen prize? Or will the British spend millions of dollars and fly halfway across the world just to drop one single, extremely expensive bomb on a runway? The answers are bloody, chaotic, and incredibly ridiculous. All of that and more will be revealed in part 2. Subscribe right now, hit that like button, or the Iron Lady will personally come to your house and take your tea away forever.